Hi, so today we're going to make a list view app with Flutter. This is what the app will look like when we're done. It has a list of items. It scrolls with physics-based scrolling. And as you can see, can be, and if you're doing any kind of apps, often you need a list as a starting point, right? This could be an e-commerce site with a list of items and so on. So let's get started with that. I'm going to use the Flutter Create tool, first of all, to create a default project, and then we'll take it from there. So Flutter Create, and I'm going to call it list 1. And this creates the project for me. Just taking a second. Yeah, I'm going to go into this folder called list1 that I just created. And over here, I'm going to go code dot. This opens Visual Studio Code in the directory that I just created. And this is the directory. And if I go into the library folder in main.dart, which is the main file which creates all of my Flutter code as a starting point, it has all this default code which was created as part of the template. I'm going to get rid of the whole thing. So let's just delete it because we're going to start fresh. Also, let's get rid of the test folder because I will not be doing any testing. So let's get rid of this as well. Delete this here, and we're ready to go. Okay, with this, let's get started. First, we have to do some default things in order to actually create a Flutter project. And the first thing we want to do is to import a package, and that package is going to be Flutter material Dart. This gives us the material template that we will be using in our code. The next thing we need is a main function. So I'm going to go void main like so. It's blank at this point. Within this, we need to call run app, and this run app has to call a widget class in order to generate the screen output. Now we haven't of course written that, so let's do that now. Now because I have the Flutter plugin installed on VS Code, I can just go press S here, and it gives me a lot of shortcuts. What we need right now is a stateless widget. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to call this widget lister. This is a widget class. Now that the class is created, I can actually call it here from run app, and I'm going to do that right now, lister, and then it's happy, and so far so good. Now the class has been created, but of course the class is not doing anything yet because it returns a container which is empty. So if I run it at this point, I'll just get a black screen. In fact, let's just in the background start running it so that by the time we're ready, the simulator is up and running with this particular code base. Now this lister is going to have a list of objects, so it stands to reason that it is going to need some kind of an array. So let's just do that. It's going to be list of type string, and I'm going to call it items, and I'm going to call it this is going to be rather a final variable because it's going to have one value. Now as soon as I say final, notice that it starts to complain here because it says, look, you're not initializing it. And so I will just add the final as a parameter into the class constructor, and then it complains that while I've added it, it is not a required parameter yet. So I'm just going to add the required keyword as well, and this happens. And of course, as soon as I do this, it starts complaining up here because it says, look, you require a parameter of type of this type, and you're not passing it into the lister class. So let's fix that next. To do that, I'm just going to create here a const array. You're going to call it, let's just call it items 0, and it's just going to be an array of strings, AAA, BBB, CCC, and just close off the statement. And let's pass this to lister for now, and let's see how that goes. So I'm going to pass this here as the item parameter, items 0, and now it's happy because it's passing this particular string array, and it's going to end up in this particular variable right over here. So at this point we have a basic skeleton app, but if we try to run it, we'll get a black screen only because the widget that controls the display is only has a container which is actually empty. So let's just quickly check that, and as you can see, it's just a black screen. So let's fix that first of all. What we want is to use a material app instead of a container. And a material app is basically a template or a component that gives us the basic building blocks of an app in Flutter. And so we're just going to go material app here. It has a couple of properties. One of them is title, and I'm just going to call it material title. And the second one is home. You can think of it as a sort of home page, if you will. And in the home page, I'm going to have another widget, and this is called a scaffold. So I'm just going to have a scaffold widget over here. Now scaffold basically gives us an app template which contains the building blocks which are useful in most applications. It has an app bar, and it has a body. So doing the app bar first, the app bar will contain an app bar component, which is going to have a title property. And in this title property, I'm just going to go and say text, and I'm going to have it say hello there. And then it has a body property, and in the body for now I'm just going to say text body, just to make sure that it's working properly. And I'm just going to close this off here with a semicolon, and if I run it now, then I should be able to get a basic material app in my launchers. So it says here now hello and body, but we don't want it to say body, we want it to have the list here. And so now we get to the point where we're actually going to use the list builder. So we get rid of this, and instead of that, in the body we have something called the list view builder. List view builder, and this requires a couple of properties. The first one is the item count, and this has to specify the number of items that we want. Now these items are going to come from the items property of this class, and which we are passing in from up there. And so the item count property will just contain items dot length, the length of this list, and that's the number of elements that we will have. And then it requires something called the item builder, which is basically a function that is going to be iterated for each row, and it's going to build that row for us. So it takes a couple of properties, context and index, context actually even, and index, and it gives us within the body. First of all, let's just build that up. For each iteration through it, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the items array, items list, and we're going to index it like so, and we're going to set the value equal to a new variable, which I'm going to call item. You can call it whatever you like. Let's just make it final item is equal to items index, okay, like so. And then we're just going to display it, and to do that I'm just going to use this is what it's going to return actually. So return, because it expects a widget, so let's return text, and within text we're going to have item, which is the variable that we just defined in the previous line. And if we now save it, you can see A, B, A, B, 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 and C, 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 and that's because it's traveling all the way from here into our lister class, and then in the item builder it is being used, and for each row it is getting indexed, and then it's getting displayed as a text item. So that is working, but it's a very small list, and we want something a bit longer so that we can really see how this works out. Now to do that, I'm going to define another variable here, call it var items1, and this time I'm going to use a list generator. What we can do is, this is a Dart property, a Dart capability if you will, a list of type string, but instead of giving it an absolute value, we're going to say generate. Generate takes a couple of properties. The first one tells how many elements to generate. We're going to generate about 100, not about, but exactly 100. And then it requires a function to actually generate them, and it takes this form. So and it's an arrow function, and for each member it'll give us back something called hello, which is the string, and we'll just concatenate the I value of the index to it so that each element looks different. And we're just going to add a couple of colons here so it looks a little bit better. And we're going to close this off, and if I do this now and I reload it, then nothing happens because we have not passed it on yet, right? So we're still passing item 0, which is this one. So now let's pass it the newly generated variable item 1 to it, save it again, reload it, and you have all the elements. So you can see that now you have a list view, and it's going from element number 0 to 99, which is exactly 100 items, which is what we wanted. So we've got the list view working at this point of time. It does not look very pretty, and so the next job is going to be to make it look a little bit better. And the way to make it look better is to wrap this text widget into a list tile widget, right? So let's just use that list tile. It has a title property which we'll use, and in this title we'll set the title equal to the text item. And if I now save it And there you go. So now you have a list which is well spaced, it has some padding built in, and it has the 100 items that we already have, right? So it's starting to look a lot better. As a final sort of thing, we are going to add some lines between these, and we're going to add some colors. Now to add these lines and colors, what we're going to do is we take this list view and we wrap it up in something called a container. And the container basically gives us the ability to apply certain properties which are called decorations. So we'll have a decoration, and it's going to be a box decoration, which is going to have, not this, right, which is going to have a border. Let's just give it a color first. So color property, and it's going to be colors dot red to begin with. And if I save it like this, everything becomes red. Not very pretty, but we'll change that color in a second. But also we have a border property. So border, and this has a border at the bottom, and this will have a border side type of component in it, border side, and we'll just use all the defaults. I'm not going to set anything, and this gives us the lines. So you have a bottom border underneath each element, and so it looks like this, right? The border side itself has a color property, so we can set this color of the lines, and let's set this to colors dot yellow, and if I save it now, the lines are yellow. So this is starting to look better, but the colors are pretty atrocious, so let's fix that quickly. So instead of colors dot red, I'm going to go color dot from color rather dot from RGB opacity, and the numbers we're going to use is 249, 243, 223, and opacity of 1. I have this written down. There you go, that looks better. And for the lines, we're going to have, instead of yellow, we're going to use color dot from RGBO, and we're going to use 255, 200, 53, and opacity of 1. And if I save it now, the lines look a little bit better, and now we have our list view. So this is how you create a list view in Flutter from scratch. I'll just do one more thing. It's working just fine, at least to the extent that we wanted it to work. First of all, let's just get rid of these blue squigglies, because it wants us to add a const modifier, which I will. If I do that, all of them go away, and that's fine. But also notice that the widget now is starting to look, there's a lot of indentation. It's very hard to read. So one of the things that we can do is we can go to the container and use the extract method refactor, and this will, what we'll do is it'll take it and create it into a new method. I'll just call it my list formatter, and I press so, and now this has been created over here, and the function has been created down there. So it has just done this for us automatically, and this makes this particular widget much easier to read, as you can see. I'm just going to go and format the document once so that it cleans up a little bit. There you go. Now it looks nice and compact, and it works as advertised. Just make sure it's still working. Let's make it a bit smaller, and let's save it. Yep, it's still working. And there you have it. That is how you do a list view in Flutter. And by the way, as a final word, if you want the source code for this, just to sort of go through it more easily, I have it on my GitHub, and it's right here, and I'm going to leave a link in the description below. So feel free to explore it as you will. Thanks for watching.